Hey guys, Legendaray here, and welcome back to another Clash Royale video. Now, are you guys ever just, playing Clash Royale, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, where did my trophies go? Well, today I'm going to tell you exactly where those trophies went by going over the 4 biggest mistakes that I see players make in Clash Royale. Now, as someone who has played Clash Royale since the global release way back when, I'd say that I have a lot of experience with some of the most common errors that players will make. And in addition to telling you guys what these mistakes are, I'm also going to give you guys a quick summary of how to fix some of these mistakes and instantly up your Clash Royale game. Now, before we get into the list, if you could please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you'd like to support me, feel free to use code Legendaray in the Clash Royale shop. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the list. Now, the very first mistake that I see a lot of players make in Clash Royale is that they're simply not playing a very balanced deck. This is more common in the lower trophy ranges, but even in the higher 4, 5, 6,000 trophies, I see a lot of players playing decks that just simply are not well suited to face the vast majority of decks that you're going to face in the arena. Maybe you've leveled this deck up very, very high, or maybe you've played this deck for so long and you're comfortable with the inner workings of how the deck works. But nevertheless, no matter how good you can get with a bad Clash Royale deck, you're always going to be hitting that limit where you face players where maybe levels won't be an issue, or where they know how to take advantage of certain aspects of an unbalanced deck. But long story short, it is very important that you're taking a balanced deck to the arena to maximize your chances of getting a good matchup. So when you're building a deck, here's a checklist of 5 things you want to make sure that you take a look at before finalizing your decks. The first is you want a win condition for a consistent way of getting to your opponent's tower. Secondly, you're going to want splash. Splash, splash, splash to take care of all the swarm units that you're going to face. Third, you're going to want some high output damage that'll be able to take out the big beefy golems and giants that you're going to face. Fourth, you're going to want to pack in some air counters to counter the super annoying players that just go Lava Hound first play. Last but not least, however, you also want to watch the elixir cost of your deck. A lot of players, when they're building their own decks, they just like to put every single card in there. Mega Knight, Elite Barbarians, Sparky, Rage, and they end up with a deck that's just simply too clumsy. So just make sure that you keep that elixir cost in check. Before we move on though, one last point. Because you're probably going to end up playing this deck on ladder, levels are also a consideration that you're going to have to make. If you don't have a card at a very high level, consider subbing in an alternative that you do have at a much higher level. Alternatively, there are certain cards in the game that simply do not really depend on their specific level. For example, the Sparky or the Tornado. And I think those are also very good options for you guys to include as a more free-to-play player. Now, the second big mistake that a lot of players make is by simply playing cards at the bridge. I saw this all the time when I was making my second account and I was, pushing that account up to 5,000 trophies. So many players would make their pushes just straight up at the bridge that I could simply counter for a positive elixir trade. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely times where you can just absolutely spam everything at the bridge. There's even an archetype called bridge spam, but for the most part, I like to promote a bit more of a controlled style of play, being a little bit more passive, making an initial positive elixir trade, and then turning that eventual elixir advantage into an offensive push. Are there going to be moments where the opponent plays, an 8 elixir golem in the back and you just have to spam everything you got in the opposite lane? Yes, but you have to make sure that you have a reason before you just spam all of your cards at the bridge. And no, trying to catch your opponents off guard at the beginning is not a good enough reason. Now, the next most common mistake that I see Clash Royale players make is not understanding the type of deck that they are playing. In Clash Royale, decks have, of course, different archetypes. For example, a cheap cycle deck is focused on cycling as many of your win conditions as possible and outcycling your opponent's counters. On the other hand, a control deck is focused on making positive elixir trades on defense and turning that into an elixir advantage that you can use on an offensive push. You don't know how many times I see players simply not have a good understanding of how to play the type of deck that they are currently using. How do you correct this? Well, my biggest tip is to develop a game plan of how you're going to be playing against all different types of matchups. For certain decks, such as a beatdown deck, this playstyle is going to be the same no matter what type of deck you're facing. You're going to be building up pushes from the back and trying to build a big enough push that will simply overwhelm your opponent's defenses. But on the other hand, for example, if you're playing a medium cost deck, you may have to play different matchups differently. Against a cheaper deck, you're going to adopt a more beatdown based playstyle, but against heavier decks, you also have the ability to absolutely spam at the bridge and apply high pressure towards your opponents. By identifying the archetype that you are currently playing and thus figuring out how exactly you're going to formulate your pushes, you're going to be much better off in the arena and have a much more solid plan of taking down all different types of matchups. Now, the last mistake that I see a lot of players make is not necessarily on the arena, but it's how players upgrade their cards. As you know, in Clash Royale, the quickest way to gain trophies is to max out a single deck, get very good at it, and then, of course, push high on ladder with it. But when I take a look at some of my friends playing Clash Royale, they just kind of haphazardly upgrade random cards left and right, and they don't exactly have a goal of trying to get as high on ladder as possible to unlock all of the juicy rewards. Once you pick a well-balanced deck that you think you want to play as best as possible, well, of course, you're going to want to max it out. But in addition to that, you're going to want to try and identify what order you're going to focus on upgrading these cards. With the most recent updates in Clash Royale all focused on improving player progression, you can max cards way quicker than you previously could have by consistently completing some challenges, playing clan war matches, and just unlocking your chest. You can max a card out in just a few weeks if you really wanted to. And so with your deck, you want to identify which cards you want to upgrade first. Ideally for this, you're going to want to identify which of your cards is either the most level dependent and you're going to want to get those up as high as possible, or you're going to want to upgrade your win conditions as best as possible. For example, in this mortar deck here, I actually maxed out my rocket first because rocket is the most consistent way in this deck of getting big amounts of damage on the opponent's tower. Following that, of course, I maxed out my mortar, which is the other win condition in the mortar cycle deck. In this deck, for example, you're going to want to upgrade the musketeer first, because when underleveled, a musketeer will die to a fireball, and that missing HP from that musketeer can oftentimes make or break your Clash Royale matches. So there we go, the 4 biggest mistakes I see Clash Royale players make all across the arena, as well as how to fix each and every one of them. I hope you guys did learn something from today's video, but unfortunately guys, that's all I've got time for in today's episode. Huge thanks to all of my channel members. You guys are the absolute G's. If you enjoyed, please leave a like down below, as well as a subscription to my channel. And as always, this is Legendaray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.